The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody, to a Kepler webinar. Today we have Curtis Manwaring, and he will be demonstrating the Delphic Oracle astrology software, and should be a very interesting time. I've finally had a chance to take a look at that software myself and find myself once again going, I need to learn more about Hellenistic. As we wait for the people to arrive, I'm going to do a little bit of advertising for upcoming events here. If you haven't had a chance to see what else is on the calendar, tomorrow Aaron Sullivan is doing the first of two workshops on retrograde planets, and this one is on the inner planets. On 2 weeks from today, on Saturday, we have a free webinar by Sine Yengal and Gary Gomes on the Joytish, on the introduction to Joytish. This is going to be an experiment. Sine is a Turkish astrologer, and she speaks English but not terribly well, so it's going to be done in two languages. There are quite a few people from Turkey who are signed up, as well as from English-speaking environs, so it should be fun. It's the first time we've tried doing a dual language webinar. On September 6th, we have a free webinar on mundane astrology from a spiritual point of view with the Norwegian astrologer Sol Johansen. So if you haven't had a chance to sign up for these, I recommend. Now, for those of you who are new to how this webinar works, you will be able to type in questions at any time during the webinar. I will be monitoring questions, and as Curtis is talking and comes up for air, I'll make sure and ask them. He said you can just ask as they occur to you. So please, by all means, when you have a question, do toss it in there.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Nope. Well, we're just about to there.
Okay.
So before we switch over to Curtis and having his screen, I do want to introduce you to everybody. So welcome, by the way. It's nice
thanks.
to have you here.
It's good to be here. I was a little worried there for about 3 weeks ago. I had gotten a notice for jury duty. That was supposed to start the week of July 28th, but that got postponed, fortunately, but it fits perfectly with the Jupiter-Mercury conjunction I'm having right now.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's Mercury conjunct natal Mercury, Jupiter on my natal Mercury within a few minutes of arc, really, so, but it's passing now. Anyway,
well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah. So let me get started here.
Well, hang on. We are about to do on the, let me switch you to being our presenter. So like I said, we are going to be getting a tour of the Delphic Oracle software. And as I change this over to you, you can...
Show my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see it now?
We can see you now, so go for it. And it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to just start open with some main things so that you know what you're looking at and how to operate the program. So I'm just going to look at chart new. Now, on the left here, you'll see these group bars, chart, edit, system of Hermes is a group. Everything that's up there is also over here in the menu. So except for the view menu, I kind of decided to just leave that in one place because it would be confusing for the bulleted bars for category, outlook, and views, because as you change the views here, that would change down here how the group bar looks. So I had to keep that separate. Starting a new chart, you just click on either Chart New or that button on the top left here that I'm highlighting. What you do is you can just, like many other programs, it will show your name, type of chart, and the date and time and so on. The main thing that I wanted to point out here, and recently people have been complaining about it, having difficulty searching the Terran Atlas. I did make it so that it's case insensitive now. It used to be that you wouldn't find a place unless you had it in the right case with the first letter capitalized and so on. So I can just do ASKI and then NY, space there, and then it comes up and it will show up. But if it's like duplicate places and so on, what you would probably want to do is type an asterisk after the place name, like for example, SHING and put an asterisk and then go DC and then press enter. It will bring it up. Well, it brings up the first option here, but if you go with locate and then do the same thing, and I just put back here, star, and then click again. It'll bring up everything associated with Washington. So the database is really large. In some ways, I wish it wasn't so much overkill, but it was a result of what happened a couple of years ago, with loss of my time zone application, because ACS went out of business for a while. Anyway, you just select one of these, whatever you do, and then you just click OK, and there it is, and then you just click OK, and it comes up. Now you can see it in the left-hand side in the open chart list afterwards, and it will display a certain way, whatever you have for a default. If I press F2, well, I'm just going to do it another way too. You can right-click on the chart and change like your wheel themes. If you want to see like fixed stars, you can just select one of these predefined themes that I have here, like, and just double-click. It'll bring up fixed stars that way, and if you hover over, it'll show you various details in the hover over hints or flyby hints. So you can look at it like that. Then you can just double-click. There are various views that I pre-programmed, and they're all in one area for a given chart. Now it will switch depending on the type of chart you have. You keep up to 5 wheels that will show. So and you can right-click, get meanings and so on like that. You can change your visibility, what's visible. Let me go back to the one that I normally like to use here. And right now I'm showing Hellenistic, or I'm showing valence of bounds. Let me go back to here, go to general, I think it's over here in Hellenistic. Oh, wait a minute, no, dignities. Go back, no, I'm showing the bounds of the Egyptians. Let me go back and double click. Okay. So anyway, that's the way to change the chart styles. You can change visibility the same way. Go to visibility theme, and it'll bring up any of. So I can like visible. I can do all visible. It's going to light things up like a Christmas tree if I like that, and you probably don't want all that. So let me go back to study auto charts. Oh, this is the one I normally use for. So, and then we click save. And these are themes that are pre-programmed. You can modify these themes in any way you want to. So, I mean, you don't have to, if you just press F2 and go up to list, you could change each one of these on its own. Colors, if you don't like colors, you can change each of these colors. I just have them grouped as a set. If you design your own, which you can select what's visible for each wheel, so that you don't have to, like, you can only, if you got like progressions, for example, secondary progressions you're probably not interested in, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto being visible in wheel 3, if that's where you're going to show them, so you can get rid of those in any which way. And then when you when you set up a theme, because there's a wheel theme here, it has all these. Now this is very much like what you would see in Solar Fire with the types of the radius, inner ring radius out of the chart designer. I used to use their program for many years until I wanted to do my own stuff. So you could find some of this. I don't want to go into all this to take the whole session, but all this will be, allow you to change the way the chart views work and so on. You can change the width of the wheels, and you can change the display, and it's really just about unlimited in its ability to do that. The only limitations would be like with the types of wheels involved. They've got lunar mansions now for some. If I wanted to go through and change the wheel style again, wheel theme, I could just do that here, but one of them has like this here with one like that, and Hank Friedman gave me these this font for the Jyotish anyway, and for the lunar mansions. But I keep in mind too, I have like a zodiac set up where you can change which types of zodiac you're using, and the hints on here won't be strictly correct in my opinion for that unless you're using some sort of Ayanamsha, because I mean clearly from reading some of the old stuff, the lunar mansions seem to be pretty much sidereal. But it depends which type of sidereal you're using, so you can change from that to any number of different ones. You got user defined, and then if you're using tropical, you can also set an offset manually. This is useful in case valence, for example, had like system A and system B for like Alexandria. Well, anyway, about if you believe that was a tropical zodiac that he was using, you could do an 8 degrees, say, precess, and you just put 8 there, no negative numbers, because you're going to have to add degrees. You could put negative numbers, so it would be something other than what would be here. So just if you're using tropical, make sure that's 0, and click Save. So the other thing I wanted to show you was the GUI styles. Let me go back to this, and let me go over here to the top here on the top left. And what this does is it gives a change in the view of the application, by various. So I could just take any of these. These are all predefined, by the way. And once you do that, you can change the chart style. So if I went to like right now, I'm showing Sapphire Camry. Let's do Ruby Graphite. And what it'll do is it'll start to change the application over. It'll hide the screen, and then it'll come back up. And then I'll have to like maybe I'll double click here, and then you see how the application has changed. Now let me see here. Go back, look at that, and then go back. So, and then we'll want to make sure we get rid of that black area there. So anyway, in that way, that's what you can do with visibility and the way things. You change the appearance pretty significantly just by doing that. So let me minimize this and get this out of the way now. So let me go back to the one that I prefer. I think it's Sapphire Camry here at the bottom. By the way, those two other views are kind of specialized views. One's the medieval, and the other one, let me just go here, Sapphire Camry. So I have matched some of the colors to some of these styles here. Not all of them are like perfectly aligned, but at least you can make.
Kurt, we've lost your sound.
Here. Are you still? Can you hear
You're
me?
back. You're back, yes.
Okay. It might have been just a temporary glitch. And anyway, let me close this out. All right. Might be a bandwidth issue, I'm not sure. But anyway, the other thing that people do is want to have the ability to turn charts. So if you press Control W, you can set up any number of combination like this too, and just do that. Say you want to do a tri-wheel. You know, I got like the modern view there. Some of the widths are different because what I did there was some of them will show time wheels, or what I call for time lords in the wheel, and then you've got the you know, transits, which I usually show on the other sides like that. But you can change this now. If I go into wheel theme again, and I've got here several that are related to the tri-wheel. If I go, let's say, synastry, double click. Okay, now it'll even up, and that's what would be typically what I would use for reading charts synastry between one or two things, people, or up to 3 or 4 or 5 really. But so anyway, let me go back to the wheel turning, which is what I wanted to show first. You don't have to just show the ascendant. You can change it. One of the things that happens here, because I did this in mind with the idea of having the ability to show fortune houses and to turn them. Now I've got like here, this is a dynamical division. If I press F3, I probably want to switch to whole sign houses, and maybe click Save, and then I can just double click on any of these, and then so I'm showing fortune there, but I'm let's see, press Control W, fortune exact 3, topical. I want to change this to fortune only, and then I just bring up another chart here, and what we're seeing now is fortune houses with the first labeled like this, and all according to whole sign here. So I don't usually use this view, but some people find it easier to look at fortune houses in this way. So I'll switch back to the ascendant and topical, and then pick a chart. Well, I've got 2 charts with a view. So that's one way to make those visible in, you know, to change the orientation or the way you want it. Now, the next thing, and I do want to change this back to, the reason I go with some of their dynamical divisions, because, well, not Placidus, I'll use Porphyry. So Valen's what I used, I think, with the Trigon Lords. And it really comes, I think I may have misunderstood one of the things about what Schmidt was saying about the Kentron, because there are 2 meanings to that word, and one of them is to be an area or a center of activity which things revolve around, and the other meaning is to act as a goad or a cattle prod to motivate a planet to action. And in regards to the triplicity rulers, or let's say Trigon Lords, which manage the wind, and we'll get to that a little bit later, I thought that it would be better to have the trisections of the angle, because what you're trying to measure with that, I think, is how goaded is the Trigon Lord to, or how much wind is in its sail, so to speak. And I think topical divisions are probably inadequate, at least from Valen's point of view, because he says anything that's to the right of the angles, so it's in the 9th house side of the midheaven, for example, is said to be an impediment because it's kind of like being held back. So and I've seen some examples of charts where I felt like, the ascensional time came up and that Trigon Lord wasn't as well placed, and there was trouble associated with it, whereas topically it would have been angular, but relative to the trisections of divisions, what Schmidt calls the dynamic angles, it fell amiss. So that's something to keep in mind. I put that as a new option recently. Let me see what else I wanted to talk about here. Really change. Well, I already did that. Excuse me for a minute. Okay. So the other thing that is really important with this application, I didn't like the way I had to always enter data every time I wanted to change a display. So I have like a set of defaults. If I press F4, brings up Plasky, New York, and you can set this up just like you would in the chart new intro. But this data here is used for everything like your that are generated automatically for the charts. I wanted to be able to click on a Time Lord system, like if I go here and I set up the graph, and I'm looking at Johnny Carson here. I wanted to be able to not have to enter data and just hover over something like that, zodiacal releasing spirit, and then click it and be able to instantly get data on what else is going on at the same time. If I was looking, now this, most of the time I would not use this. Time Lord's graph will show any different Time Lord system you want to look at from the list that I've got here set up. And it's wrong one, it's the graph. Okay, so everything that's here on the list here, decennials will be up here, then there's lunar quarters, zodiacal releasing fortune, spirit, and so on. Everything that's here in the same order, whatever order it happens to be, and you could change this and drag it up so lunar Mount Maria if you really wanted to have it there, and then click save, and then click that, and then you clear it, and then you get that, and there's the lunar Mount Maria in that order. So this larger view is useful to see if Time Lord systems like the general ones from particular decennials, lunar quarters, if they all bunch up, if you find that Saturn is ruling over a whole bunch of periods, which occasionally does happen, it's the longest period typically, then you can probably forecast some sort of difficulty or some sort of issue really coming into prominence in life at that time. So it's useful in that regard, but I find that it's more useful to actually work with the lists and then use these time wheels. So what you have here above is like the general period, if there is one, and then the subdivisions will be shown in a line, like so. You can also change the orientation if you're lacking screen space. For example, you could change it so that these will actually show vertically. I'm not going to do that right now. It's kind of pointless to do it, but I'm just mentioning it so that you know that you can do that. But the point of this is for most of other windows, all you have to do is just click, and there you are. You have what's happening at the moment. For example, if I clicked on that August 25th, 1964, what you're seeing there that in the main chart view is how it changed. I'm showing transits, and then there will be the time wheels that are associated with auto-generated charts, which I haven't shown yet, but we'll get into that right now. Let me close this out. What I typically do with most of my work is just stick to one particular Time Lord system, like zodiacal, releasing fortune, or spirit, and I'll go through and I'll look at what's going on. This is fortune. Let me go back to spirit. It doesn't matter. And then I'll double click, and then I'll look at another period, and then it'll update, and then you'll see, then I can say see, for example, perfections of the ascendant. Now what's going on with these time wheels is that you start out with the innermost wheel, and they look like curved music scores here. And you can hover over and see what it is. Like I've got perfections of the ascendant set up. And these arrows here are basically the variation where you could think of the year as moving incrementally, like 1 month would be like 2.5 degrees, and so on. So there's like the annual perfection that's thought to move piecemeal, whereas originally the conceptualization that would be the whole year would belong to like a certain sign or planet, like the Lord of the Year. If you're doing perfections of the ascendant, then whatever that year is right here would be Mercury, because it's Virgo, and that would be active for the whole year. But then then the medieval variation would be to vary these according to how much, like the daily would progress 2.5 degree days per sign, kind of mimicking the lunar motion. And so what you're looking at is the 4 levels from inside to out. In the perfections, there are really only 3, but I put the 2 variations for like the daily, the medieval daily being the slower one, and then there's valence perfection of 1 sign per day on the outside, which doesn't have an equivalent, motion per hour, for example, of dividing that up. So anyway, the other thing that I'm showing here is zodiacal releasing fortune. I'll get to how we can change these in a minute. Same thing, zodiacal releasing fortune. You got level 1 there, and it's showing and more towards the inside, and then you look to level 2, and it's over here, and that's Virgo. And then you see 3, and then you see 4. And so anyway, if you want to change what you're displaying there, you go to auto-generated charts. And right now I'm showing perfections on the inside. That would mean it's at the top, transits, and then zodiacal releasing from fortune on there. But I can take any number of these and put them over, say I want to perfect the midheaven. And then I click Save, and then I go there. And then what you're going to see is if I double click on time wheel, it's going to put in all that data. It gets a little bit cumbersome, but at least it's there if you want to use it. You can also reduce it and just say show transits, for example. You don't have to have that at all, and it'll just automatically update. Double click. So I'm showing transits on the outside. Of course, right now what I'm doing, I've got to change this because it's meant to a different wheel for a certain visibility. I'm going to go back now to what I typically use. Let's go F3 actually. And I want to put ones that I had, fortune and perfect ascendant. And I'll put that on the inside and then click Save in the middle. If it's important to realize that I've gotten a few places in the chart designer and other places, if there's a Save button in between when you 2 lists, then it's a good idea to click Save there and then Save down at the bottom, because I wanted the cancel button to be able to revert changes if one didn't like what they were doing. So, all right, now I have this whole application set up for basically two different types of astrology, I guess, at this point. I am kind of working in the area of Jyotish as well to try to incorporate some of that, because there is a lot of similarity between the Hellenistic material and what you find in India. So now, with the classical, the medieval stuff, this is more stuff that I've been studying with, like, for example, Ben Dykes put out something with solar revolution technique a couple of years ago. It's a variation of Umar al-Tabari, Um, so that will, you can just click that, and it'll show like the ascendant going through the bounds or whatever is for use typically with solar returns and so on. And then you can just click, and again, everything here, I set it up so that you can get data automatically. So I hope now at this point, for the most part, people will understand what they're looking at. I mean, you can change these different views so that you can see what you want to see. If you want to see like the Dwada Samsa, if you want to see the decans, if you don't want to see anything other than just the signs, you can do that too. But I want to go on into my examples now.
Before you do, there are a couple of questions. One is,
okay.
Is there a view for the profected chart with the planets staying in the same houses but the signs changing?
Don't think I thought of that. No, the signs changing, but the perfections, I'm not sure what I'm...
The planets staying in the same houses but the signs changing around them.
Yeah, no, I haven't done anything of that sort that yeah.
Okay,
No.
the other question, were you using the Egyptian terms on this?
Yeah, this is what's showing right now, the Egyptian terms, although I had briefly there showing Valen's terms, and then there were a couple other types in there, Chaldean, and I forget what the other one is, but yeah, you can change, and then there was another thing that I was going to do user defined because that was asked for, but I wanted to work out a way to do user defined dignities, kind of take it to a higher level. Now I was going to move that stuff over here because in the decan wheel I can change like the type of decans used, Jyotish, triplicity, or Chaldean, and you know, but I didn't do that in the bound wheel because I didn't have that set up at the time because it was the chart designer didn't exist and I already had bounds in the wheel. So so the bounds are maintained over here. I got Valen's called the Ptolemaic also. Right now those are the 4 types I have in there. And I wanted to put in user defined as well. It really isn't that hard to do. It's kind of just grunt work. But I've been having a hard time finding the time to get around to doing that.
Okay.
Now,
there's one last question as well.
Okay.
Are there any plans to include a 90-degree dial?
I hadn't. It's been asked of me a number of times, but I have it on a to-do list, but I'm not sure where I have it in the list. So, yeah, I do have something like that. I already sort of did that with. It's not a dial though. It's what I did was I have the graphic ephemeris and set up, and I can change the dial here, but I could do that with a wheel as well. But I only have there are a lot of other types of dials that are there that could be done too, one for every type of aspect. By the way, clicking on here changes the view. Everything is like that. Everything just about everything on the right hand side. If there's a date associated with it, clicking will bring up the view associated with that date for the date that you clicked on. So.
And does that include showing planetary speed?
Yes, it shows in the where you're saying graphic ephemeris. I'm sure.
Or
I have. If you hover over any of the planets, the speed is there. Also, I have it in the report section at the bottom. Down here, there's like a section on speed. So miscellaneous reports. Where did I put it? Well, it's one of these in here. That one. But normally I just work with it within the program because right in this section there, if you see it, the moon says speed slow but decreasing in longitude. That's the actual rate of speed per day, 12.15 degrees. In latitude, the speed is positive 0.14, and so on, 40 course below that.
So does it include the declination in that? I didn't see that.
It depends on what
Not
it
in
is. If it's the sun, then it doesn't have a change in, well, there's latitude. Declination actually is part of this. If you go to the utilities, asteroids and fixed stars, and they're bringing that up. Now I can show a whole bunch of different things here. I'm going to click on and we'll close planets and keep asteroids showing. I can filter by magnitude, but it shows declination over here on the right. I can see it.
Okay.
So the declination, right, ascension, speed, again, it wouldn't be relevant for the fixed stars. And by the way, I put like an area where you could sort. When you click on a header, it changes the sorting according to the contents of what it is, and so on. So it's useful in that way. The lot list is similar, by the way. A lot of them have this list view component that allow sorting in that way. So if you see that, like for the chart database, for the lot Arabic parts is another way to call them, they have that in there.
Great. A couple of more quick questions before you go on.
Okay.
The let's see. There's a question on a visual display of the Moira degrees in the dignities option.
In the dignities option, are you referring to F3?
A visual
I'm not sure.
I'm not oh.
The only place I mentioned Moira here was within the Time Lords graph.
Okay.
And that's, okay, up here. They showed various ways, like I can go here. I still got the lunar Moira. Let me put it back where it was. The other thing too here is once you get this set up the way you want, click Save, and then it'll keep that set up. But if you want to, you know, list or save all your different, like I sometimes do annual divisions, and I'll bring this back, and then you click Save, and then you click Save here, and then if I want to redo this, now I have the resolution. Well, I have the resolution set very low. You can expand it outwards. Like if I change over here, general, I have pixels per year. Let me go make it 300 and click Save. Now if I redo this, see how that expanded that out?
Yeah.
So now it's a little bit more readable. That's a very important setting. The other ones also control the display of settings. Sometimes I have to consult my own help file. It's a little bit complicated. But for most people, it will look just like this unless you're using a really high font. If you're using like, you know, 25 or 150% of the usual because of accessibility settings in Windows, then you might want to do some playing around. I can go through GoToAssist and help you out with it. In fact, I've done that with a couple of people who've had that problem. But for most people, if you just have like standard settings, this is the way it's going to look.
Okay, now the person who asked that question says they meant the monomora or planetary rulers of each of the 360 degrees for a radix chart.
Oh, to put that in the wheel? No, I didn't put that in there. Okay. Just because that would be extremely crowded. However, it does show the Monomora. If you hover over it, you go down to the bottom, and it says Moira. It's the decan, and you got Moira, and you got a lot of sounds, so Dodecada Moira, and so on.
Okay.
And,
which system of Moira are you using? Is it the Paul of Alexandria?
I believe I got it from Valens. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I probably, yeah. And it's something that I don't use very much, so I really couldn't tell you when I get this out of here.
And then the last one is somebody was asking about asteroids. How many are included?
Well, by default, there's 108, but it's unlimited. Oh, by the way, somebody asked me to demonstrate how to add asteroids to the database. Basically, what you're doing is you've got to go get a file on Swiss ephemeris. And basically, what you do is you kind of set up and you log in. Hopefully that'll bring this up. And I've got one for the Swiss ephemeris, so I just log in. If you go to the website, and it'll be in, let's see, icon, let's see, JPL files. I'm not sure if it's, but somewhere in here there are a bunch of files. Ephemeris. No, I don't want to change it. You probably won't allow it. Yeah, and these are like asteroids. So if you got like asteroid number, then you just kind of go over. Let's go up to where we were here. And what you would do is you just bring it over to the ephemeris directory over here, where your Swiss ephemeris is, and you just drag it over. And the MPC number will be like this, SC05006. So what you would do is you would just type, once you brought it over, let me just bring, I don't know what asteroid it would be. SC5014S. Well, you don't need to. I should be able to just type 5014. So, and then UNK. No, let me just put that. Okay. No. Unknown. UNK. And then 5014, and then I just click add. Okay, and you should know what asteroid that is, and then the next time you click it, I don't know where it would show up in the list, but whatever, if I go here, okay, let's do search here, see if I can find the use. Unknown.
Okay, well,
there it is, right there at 21 Leo. So some asteroids there, I don't know which one I put in there, but that's how you do it. It's really not more difficult than that. And so.
All right. So the next, that's pretty much takes care of those questions. Although one person is anxiously awaiting for when you get to lots. So I'll let you continue on.
Okay. Let me go back to my original view here. I'm kind of running shorter on time than I'd hoped to. Do I have up to 2 hours? I thought maybe
you have an hour and a half, but if people are willing to stay around and you are willing to go a little later, that's fine.
Okay. So anyway, I had this whole philosophical thing I think I might want to. Now in the P&A, preliminary natal analysis, there's certain things. This is basically set up for showing, how fit planet is, but it's just based on Schmidt's interpretive material largely. He's basing it on many sources, so it's not like true to any individual source necessarily. It's kind of like a conglomeration of factors that are like true amongst many different sources. So, and the same thing, the wizard will explain most of that. You can select the planet, and then you can go through, and it will go and explain all the different cells, cell by cell, so you have like fitness and all that. I'm not going to go too much into that because the really interesting stuff, the Universal Hermetic. Let me start out with Nelson Mandela. Of course, his chart is one of those dirty data charts, but I think that it might actually be in the right ballpark. I don't know if I think the lots are probably correctly placed, and we'll see why later. But I'm a little bit concerned whenever I hear that number 27. It could mean two things. It could mean the periods of Aries and Taurus, or not Aries and Taurus, Aries and Pisces are brought together, and that something's happening in Taurus. You see, after 12 years of Pisces and 15 years of Aries. Now, Mandela was in prison for 27 years, so it fits for pretty well with what was going on with Scorpio and Sagittarius, where at the very end of the Sagittarius period, he's delivered from prison. So, anyway, let me get this out of the way. Now, with the Universal Hermetics, Schmidt suggested that a good pretext for this was the myth of Ur, and it's at the end of Plato's Republic. Plato's Republic goes into the corruptibility of the soul, or I should say the incorruptibility of the soul, that each species has a particular type of corruption, and that the soul, he goes through a long list of that. But so at the end, there's this soldier who has a near-death experience, and as he travels up through towards heaven, sees like two portals coming out of the earth, one from heaven and going up to heaven, and the other coming down, and the souls coming from the earth were all dirty and lamenting and wailing and saying how horrible things were, and the souls that were coming from heaven were chanting praises of how wonderful everything was. And then in the middle, there's this, I guess it was Clotho, Lachesis, and I forget the third sister, spinning the fates. Well, and each soul was asked to choose a life, and there were many and varied lives, like more than you can count. And so one of them, I think, hastily was like first in line, chose the life of a tyrant because it seemed like a good life, but then complained that involved the death of his children. And then there was another, I think, at the end, and then they all kind of worried about being in line first because they didn't want the best ones chosen. But in the end, Odysseus chose the life of a simple, just an ordinary citizen, and he said that was exactly the kind of life that he wanted. So, in this selection, it's suggested that the political officer represents kind of like what the life is for. So it's kind of like a category for that selection. And in this case, I don't know if I'm showing it right. Okay, political officer Jupiter. Now, in the predomination, we look to which light is of the time. Usually that's where this comes from. And when it says confidence low like that, it means that it didn't find any of the defined examples that I used from Valens. So that's in book 3 for predominator. And a lot of times that will, go to the ascendant, although Valens does say, this is what's paradoxical about that. I mean, he says earlier that, if the sun is in the 12th, then the midheaven will predominate. And if the light is like down in the 3rd, the midheaven will predominate. Presumably, and I don't understand the 3rd, I would think the ascendant would, because that's the only aspect that can be cast there to any of the predominating. And if the two lights are like in the same sign and an angle, then the predominator will actually be the prenatal lunation degree. So Um, this is one of those things where I couldn't program everything, but I've got the basics in there. So you want to keep those in mind when you're dealing with this. If you're dealing with a particular source, I have allowed for like changes for some things through various settings. Like for in the Time Lord system settings, there's variations for zodiacal releasing and all that. Well, every single Time Lord method has like different settings for each. So let me go back to Mandela. Now, it makes sense that for him, he wrote a book, came out in '94, called The Long Walk to Freedom. He, of course, was really had a really difficult life. So we might expect to see that. Neither of the lights predominate with any certainty, possibly the sun. But if you were to do length of light technique here, it would probably, in this case, be the ascendant. If the sun predominated here, which would be definitely better than the moon in this case, then what you would look for is the high leg. This would be the high leg. The Alcacadon would be the bound lord, according to Valence. Some people would just use the domicile lord. And if that wasn't here, so let me take a look here. Confines of Jupiter. And it is in the same sign, so it's basically in concourse. Well, not quite, because it's reversed. If the sun was heading towards Jupiter, it would be in concourse. And that would mean that there would be, that the sun would be the Aphita. I'm not sure, in this case, whether you would use the ascendant or the sun would be probably one of those two. Because of my feelings about, in terms of thinking about death, some clients will ask where they want to know, but really it's best to think of it, I like the way Lee Lehman put it, they're kind of like exit visas. There are lots of them and you don't know which one will be taken, so really you ought to be thinking in terms of risk management and dangerous periods, because things that could have killed us back in the medieval ages are easily overcome now. I had one that was pretty dangerous back in the year 2000, and it was gallstones. I had surgery, had it removed, but if I had been born, say, 500 years ago, I probably would have died from it. So anyway, and it's not necessary to take this in a Stoic point of view either. Schmidt did suggest a model where you could think of these causes as being material causes, not efficient causes. It's not like you have the cue ball hits the 8 ball at 45-degree angle, goes into the side pocket. That would be like an efficient cause. It's almost like the laws of physics determine that something has to happen a certain way. A material cause is something that is necessary but not sufficient in order to bring something about. For example, if you're walking in a park, you have to have legs. Supposedly you can see fairly well, so you have eyes. But none of these things make you walk in a park or go jogging on any particular day at any given time. They're things that set up the possibilities for something to happen. So finding the high leg in Alcacadon, well, there are many different, my view is that there's so many different procedures. The best thing to do is include all of them and consider them all like risk assessment. So, anyway, let me get back to this suggests the type of life that Mandela chose. And then there's the Curios, and here we have a selection of several planets. Schmidt thought of those as like officers on the deck of a ship, and they all line up, and then if any of them aren't able to take on the mission, they step back from the line. so to speak. That's kind of the metaphor that he used. Well, what you're supposed to do here is choose that which is lying most prior or is in a better condition. So in this case, if I was to look at these, Jupiter is lying prior. It's very powerful. I think Mars is not really going to beat that. Mercury, no, it doesn't beat it. So I think Jupiter is also the curios here. So it represents that you chose the life of kind of like someone who, is interested in justice, truth, and freedom, and so on, and to kind of choose a path for, and took on the same personality to do so. It's not necessarily that one takes on a personality like that. Say, for example, who took on Mars might be a warrior, for a jihad or something like that, holy war. So now these, I also want to say a little bit about evolutionary astrology. There's kind of like a difference here between, in this context, we're looking at the concrete particular, and you aren't what you do, so to speak, or what befalls you. The person was dismayed when they chose a life of a tyrant. Didn't have a character of being an evil person, just lacking experience. And you could also say, well, maybe lacking consciousness. And if that is a factor, I think some of these things, one of the reasons we have some degree of fate is so that we don't run ourselves into trouble. It's a really difficult thing if you have to constantly think about breathing, or you forget, and then your heart stops. Some things are controlled for us until the time that that we're evolving and coming to a different place in life and understanding things differently. Then maybe we can take on other things. So anyway, I think to the extent we're only fated to the extent that we take on limitation, and there are also other issues, related to Stoicism, and for example, the predestination paradox. It's common in the Middle Ages. They worried about, well, if we have free will, then we can sin, but if we don't have free will, then it's not our fault, and so this is kind of there are multiple levels, and I think that what we have here is kind of like a set of the possible things that can happen, and the possibilities are pretty large, although they do get narrowed down a little bit as you look at the Arabic parts or lots. Each planet will, for example, be combined with another planet and cast from the ascendant, but what's happening there is one planet sees something in another, and when you're casting one from one side to another, remember, years ago, I remember Schmidt had this optical theory where the light of the eye goes out to the object and then reverts back to the, in terms of perception, back to the individual. What if you're casting a lot or a ray from one planet to another, then if it's from the sun to the moon, you come out from the ascendant, well, one is the active principle, the other is passive, and that passive principle would be the light coming back. So I think that's what's kind of going on when it's kind of the way, so does the moon select out of the sun what it sees, or does the sun select out of the moon? You see, so it's not exactly like, so when you get that, lots, they select out certain characteristics of each of the planets, and they kind of focus on some things and exclude others, and that is some way of getting rid of some of all the different possibilities that you might look at. So anyway, now, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit is the nautical metaphor. Schmidt said that the sect light summons the wind, and then the trigon lords manage the wind. And at least in terms of eminence, it's kind of hard to see it in Mandela's chart. I mean, he often said that he was just an ordinary man who took on leadership due to extraordinary circumstances. So if we take a look at Trigon Lords of Cycle, I hear the sun, so it's Mars, Venus, and the Moon. Let's see, the other way, Venus, Mars, and the Moon. And we have Venus technically in decline, although this is just the way the program would see it because it's barely below the ascendant. Topically, it's definitely, being goaded, or I should say right on the descendant, so it's very strong. So I would just change, I could switch this. This is how you would do it. F3, you go to Hellenistic, you get rid of the dynamical divisions. That's a new setting that I put in just a few days ago. And then if I recalculate, it will go back to being pivotal. So, and that's because it's using whole signs there from 0 to 30 degrees Gemini for measuring it. You switch those back and forth. Sometimes, this stuff really requires good judgment for the most part. Now, he had a really difficult life, but it's interesting to see if you just look from the perspective of Ptolemy, the beginning of life here, middle of life here, and then the end. Venus and Jupiter kind of represent that victory at the end. Now, I'm going to focus on a particular method, zodiacal releasing from spirit.
Before you go there,
Mandela.
We had a quick question about the ranking and eminence. You had the ranking of the planets. Is there someone remembered from an earlier demonstration that you had some spot that sort of gathered all that together on the ranking?
In the Universal Hermetics right here.
Okay.
You mean for the captain, the Curios? Yeah, it's right there. There's a wizard that goes through it too.
That might be what they were remembering.
So you could just go through each of these, and then it will help you in the assessment, and then in the end you got to make a decision.
Oh, he was talking about the rank of the chart itself, not the individual planets. Excuse me.
The rank of the chart. You mean like how eminent it is? I used to, years ago, I had an eminence score in there, but I took it out because it was really highly misleading. For example, I did one for February 5th, 1962, and everything was in Aquarius and an angle, and the score went through the roof. So, and it was way out of proportion. I mean, most people would have a score around 7 or 8 or maybe 12 if they were really eminent, and then of course this person who was born on February 5th was 50. It was misleading, so it had some problems, and I took it out. But I'm not sure if that's what.
Yes, that was what they were referring to. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that was just me getting crazy counting the numbers and everything.
Okay.
Now.
So on to zodiacal releasing.
Yep. Now, here, let me make sure this is Mandela. It was 1918. He spent, so we see the first years being Leo, and he was kind of like fairly well-established royal family, but also in a situation where they were kind of an oppressed people. Zosa, I think it was, tried anyway. And so the main thing that I noticed here is that once he gets through law school, he got married, and then it was around 1946. I'm not sure exactly when. It's not the important part. But he gets in, he starts rising in prominence right around this Cancer period when he gets involved in the ANC, and then as he becomes a lawyer, first of all, he doesn't get his degrees, he's been denied a degree, but he starts getting into these big legal problems, just as he hits the Libra period, and that's very appropriate because you got that contrary to sect Mars up there, you know, and fairly high above the horizon. So the interesting, let's see, for 8 years due to Mars, and eventually in the end, he gets to this Aquarius period. Now you might not think, what's with Aquarius? You know, it goes from Libra, the sub-period Aquarius, and you got Saturn casting an opposition ray, Mars, and then Jupiter's in the Virgin, Venus casts a ray. So we see kind of a mixed thing, but the thing is a lot of accusation is also there. And so when he gets to, I think it was, he was arrested on August 5th, my first birthday, by the way, 1962. I was 1 year old to the day. We get to, it's down here. So it was under Gemini Capricorn. I'll just double click. And that brings up, you know, the associated planets and charts going on. But Fortune, what's going on here is it's Gemini handing over to the 10th from Fortune, by the way. That's what he would have since he's got Fortune in Aries. And that is a very important period to pick out. The angle, all the angles relative to Fortune are very important. But to look at in particular, you know, that will show up later as being a very visible period, as what Valens would say it's a time of breakthrough, when one is seen for their accomplishments and all that. He goes into prison anyway, and this is, it was 19, and then it wasn't, you know, he was kind of like denying everything, and then around the time of, it was July of 63, July 11th, and he gets to this loosening of the bond. That was the very day that the government found a whole bunch of papers about, you know, all of its implication with the ANC and all the, you know, and then they started the Ravona trial for treason, and that's when what we have here is the encounter of the domicile lord. If I go back, just make it a little easier to see. The sub-period is Aquarius, which means that Saturn is speaking for the period. If in the subdivision you encounter the planet that's being talked about here, which is the Leo period, it's the loosening of the bond to within a day. And so that's like a wow. I mean, you know, it's one of those types of things that make you think that really works. The encounter of the domicile lord brings the period into focus, according to Schmidt. And of course that led to his being in prison for 27 years, which basically corresponds to the periods of Scorpio and Sagittarius being put together, although he started his prison term on August 5th of 62. And so he gets to the end of that. Now the same principle happens again when we go through that end to Sagittarius. We get to here, and it was on February 11th of 1990, right there. So what we see here is Sagittarius handing over to Cancer, and guess what's in Cancer? Jupiter. You know, that's the encounter of the domicile lord again. And then we come to Leo on the third level, and then it comes to Cancer again. And what's in Cancer? The Sun. So what that does is it brings it all into focus. Everything that this period is supposed to be about, you get the event associated with it when it comes into focus. So, and this is a very apt description for somebody who is being released from prison, because it's from the 1st to the 8th house. You know, by the way, I'm not sure, some people, a lot of, if they don't know, the signs of, well, I should say the 8th, the 12th, and the 4th houses are often associated with confinement in some way. Valens has a bunch of rules for these later on in the book after section on predomination. anyway, that I thought was really amazing. I think the other thing, well, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have. What comes in after that is, of course, he becomes president of South Africa. And this corresponds, well, it gets into that period, and then right around Aquarius, again, he's president and lasts till about 1999. And then he leaves office when he encounters that south node, Venus conjunction with Gemini. But that's his 10th from fortune period right there. If you count Aries there's Capricorn, and he's visible, highly visible, and very successful the rest of life. Also, there's a lot of difficulties too, of course. But he made a breakthrough around that time. So that was what I wanted to bring up with him. There are some other examples here. Martin Luther King. All right, I'll double click here. Now if we look at the Trigon Lords, okay, let me make sure this is updated. We're pretty confident that the predominator is, because it's angle, it's the sun. I do think he was probably born a little bit earlier than this, because he gets much later than Spirit would have been in Pisces, and I don't think that fits very well. And I'm always a little bit suspicious of birth times that are exactly noon or on the hour like that. So what we have here, the Trigon Lords really aren't that spectacular here. In fact, they're all showing decline, which is typically showing difficulty. But if we look at the fortune houses, then we see that they're all angular. So that's one of the things that I think that is really remarkable. I've seen other charts like this. Bill Gates is another example that comes to mind, where he has fortune in Aquarius, 10th from fortune is Scorpio. He has Sun, Saturn there, and he has Jupiter in Leo. And those are the Trigon Lords of the second of the moon that's in Aries at the midheaven. And they were all like, they weren't angular at all, but he has gone very far in life. And that's what would be expected with the nautical metaphor if the Trigon Lords can catch the wind. Well, in this case, and Schmidt would say that fortune represents the weather. So if and it's kind of like saying, well, the angles aren't there, but later on, because fortune usually represents what happens later in life due to energeia going to entelechy, apotelesma, and so that's just an overall general idea of what happens if you're looking at fortune angles. These are things that happen later on. Now, if we take the zodiacal releasing from Spirit again, and I had something, I think I'm going to take this up later. Spirit, well, it's already showing. I want to make sure I get the right one. Okay, so he's in his Aquarius period, and right around the time he reaches this Pisces period, he's like all in like highly visible. That's his 10th from fortune. By the way, those are both of the main Trigon Lords. It's also, I think, the Lord of, I don't have a lot of exaltation here, but I believe it's in Cancer. Let me change that for a minute and show that. Visibility. I'll just go right to the visibility tab, make sure that, let's see here, we got exaltation. Should be showing fortune, Spirit. No, this is checked for right planets. So the other thing you got to keep in mind is you want to make sure you're showing the right set. Rotation. No, for Blastus and assist. I'll leave that there. Okay, now click Save. I'll make sure that's out, and then we click Save. And we'll double click here, and there we are. So The valence does give an example of the lot of Bacchus when it's conjunct up at the culminating. That's also an eminence indication. Also having the lot of exaltation, the moon in the 10th from fortune, is a major one. So I think that pretty much bails this chart out, which would otherwise be a fairly difficult life. And I guess it was kind of difficult early on. So the other thing that I was curious about, he was one of those people who was assassinated. And so one of the things we look to is the prenatal lunation. Is it an aversion and witnessed by malefics? And what we have here, the prenatal lunation at Capricorn, we have Saturn, the ruler, and it's being opposed by Mars. So we got one indication there. The other thing that comes to mind is the 40th day of the moon. Where is the moon? Now this is where you don't have to guess about this. I mean, they do have like the first, 7th or 3rd, 7th, and 40th day of the moon in valence. It goes in the 40th day shows conditions around death typically. And what you're looking for is whether or not Saturn, Mercury, or Mars are there present or casting rays into the place, particularly by superior square, for example. Go to, not reports, derivative chart, and go to Martin Luther King, and I don't want Hellenistic, I want to go down here, 40th day of the moon, and click OK, and then we'll see the chart. So all we're really interested in here is where the moon degree is. We don't actually use the chart, but that was an easy way to calculate. So it's at 725 Virgo. And we look at here, and we look at Virgo. We see that Mars casts a superior square ray, and Saturn also has like a sinister ray cast. But there is the rays of Venus and Jupiter also. So anyway, what we want to look at now is here for Zach releasing from fortune, because valence says that fortune represents the physical body, things that befall us that are unintended, health matters, and also if there's any danger, we can see it using fortune. So, born 29, fortune's here in Gemini. Therefore, we already got like trouble with Mars being present, but the deadly place is therefore Capricorn. And we might say that part of the reason why it's so dangerous is because he was highly visible, in other words, he was under threat of assassination. But he comes to that in 1966. So that's saying that in that general range of time that he was in pretty severe bodily danger. There's a sextile array coming from Venus that gets shouted down because the valence says that they're too feeble. There is a ray of Jupiter, but for some reason it didn't help. But maybe to help for the general period. But once you get down through a little bit further, the assassination happened on April 4th, 1968. Go down here. And so we have Cancer having the general times to Capricorn. Of course, that Cancer period makes him even more visible. And then he gets to just near the bottom here, April 4th. So he reaches Capricorn period, which I think Chris Brennan, by the way, calls a full circle period. That's correct. Yep. So everything comes home to roost, and then he gets to the Gemini period, which is the day he got shot. Of course, it might have been earlier in the day, but a lot of times the valence says if something bad's about to happen, it happens just a bit early. And there it was. So I think we can say that, I mean, it's difficult. There are a lot of, you notice that it happens, you can look in hindsight and see that these things are showing up. and they happen, but at the same time, it's not the only Capricorn period he's been in. I mean, he could have been in this one right here in 1956. Okay, would we make a prediction? And I would say that, you know, only of danger, you know, potential danger, and that's basically what I do with this. Another one that is very similar to this, John F. Kennedy. If we take a look at the fortune being here, we look at the deadly place, again, it's Capricorn. We got a malefic there, and we got Mars casting an opposition ray, just like with Martin Luther King. And so we got to change this again. Okay, so his mother was always saying, don't fly, you're going to end up in a plane crash. And it turned out to be truly prophetic. He reaches the loosing of bond to Capricorn, which is the deadly place relative to fortune. And it has these two benefics here. Well, I think, you know, he was traveling with two women to a wedding, so that kind of fits the fifth house nature of in the background, but that, you know, it was a deadly situation to be brought out. Now, one of the things here too that I should probably bring up, whenever you see both lights below the horizon, and I kind of racked my brains around this for a long time, especially with Obama's chart, you know, you want to make sure that you're dealing with the right lots, because Valence says that they do potentially swap position, especially if the lights aren't speaking with authority. Then what would happen? I don't think that's the case here, but it's something to keep in mind. If something doesn't seem to be working out, then you probably ought to press F3 and go to lots, and you can switch that and go from valence to, you know, just using the sect, or rather to use the diurnal formula when it's below the horizon. So I'm just going to go here, click that. It's already so. All right. So that was giving the background that he has the dangerous period from 97 to 2000 in particular. He crashed in the ocean, I think it was like the evening of the 16th of July, 99. Let's see here. Right around here. So again, it's like a repetition. This is what Ellen Black, I think, calls amplification when you get to that around July 5th. I call them mirror periods, but the idea is that when you get into a repetition of periods down below, that's more likely to bring up something highly significant. And so he ends up there, and he's back into the deadly period again, and then Aquarius, which just reiterates that Saturn in the 8th from fortune. So again, that's kind of a, you know, it's hard to predict, but that one actually, you know, is a little bit more visible than most. Now, Steve Irwin, I'm going to skip Steve Jobs because we don't have a lot of time here. Steve Irwin is one of those dirty data ones, but one of the things that happens with the prenatal lunation is that it's valid frequently for several days. And so we know if the Lord of the prenatal lunation is an aversion meaning not being able to be seen from passing a classical Ptolemaic aspect like square, trine, or opposition sextile. If it can't be seen, it is an aversion here, and it's witnessed by malefics. Not just witnessed, but it's contained by malefics. And it also happened in the 8th house. Okay. The other thing too is fortune. If this time is correct, and it might be within, it says 418. I don't know why they said it was like dirty data or questionable, but if it's that, then that all falls in the 8th from fortune. So in Mars, Mercury, and Saturn all destroy each other. This comes from the idea of the placement of the domiciles. For example, Mercury is said to destroy Saturn because Virgo is in the 8th from Aquarius. Gemini is, or I should say, because Gemini is the first house in Capricorn, the 8th from it, Saturn destroys Mercury, so they destroy each other, and they're right on the ascendant here. Mars destroys itself. It's one of those suicide planets along with Venus because Aries and Scorpio are first 8th house relationship, and likewise Libra, Taurus is first and 8th house relationships. So, so we have, you know, a considerable amount of danger being shown here. Let me just go here and see what that says for Steve Irwin. He's that guy, I don't know, some people may not know who he was, but he was the crocodile hunter. He was on Animal Planet and used to like to open jaws of crocodiles with their head, his head inside and so on, and not get bit. But he died from a stingray while he was off at one of the coral reefs off Australia because he was harpooned through the heart with a stingray. This was in 2006. Now, it's interesting, the fortune goes to the dead, well, it's not the deadly place, but it's in the 8th house. Okay. And it was September 4th, 2006. So we go down here, September, okay, so right around there, it's Cancer, Leo, and so it's not really, it would be kind of hard for me to accept, wait a minute, the Moon, Mercury, where are they? Oh, so the time, it's emphasizing here Mercury and the Moon. And Mercury and the Moon are in a first 8th house relationship. That's kind of like what's known as an almagale, which is when planets have the same distance relationship that they have to their, well, no, that's not it. Never mind. Let's go to Robert F. Kennedy. Now, his chart is one that I definitely would have forecast danger ahead of time because here we have fortune in Cancer. The deadly place is there for Aquarius. And we have two superior square rays from the malefics casting a ray into us. So we know, and there's no help from the benefics. Venus and Jupiter at the midheaven, but they are an aversion to the place, so they can't help out. So whenever he comes into an Aquarius period, we know beforehand that for fortune that he's in, that's a dangerous period. Let me switch over to Robert F. Kennedy, and then we go to, he died June 5th, 68. We go here. So there he is. I mean, that's the Leo period, loosening the bond to darkness, which Valence says it's not particularly good, although I would say that it's not, usually it's not that obvious, especially if you have a well-placed Saturn, if it loosens to darkness. Say if it's in Aquarius, Saturn, Aquarius, then typically that would be not so bad, especially in a day chart. So we go over a little bit farther. And it was June 5th, I think it was 68. Okay, so what we had here was Gemini, and that was the encounter of the domicile lord, because we have here Gemini being the 3rd level, and then it encounters the domicile lord, and that basically says it's time to go. There's the 8th house. So that's pretty startling when you see it like that. So anyway, I wanted to look at, let's see here. We got a couple others. Sonny Bono. Now he basically was in accident skiing, and basically what we got here. is the domicile lord of the, and he hit a tree head on at about 30 miles an hour and didn't even see it, I guess. It didn't look like it didn't even make a turn to try to avoid it. He was just looking somewhere else where he wouldn't go, and then got plowed into a big tree. And basically died from blunt head trauma. Here we have the prenatal lunation in Aquarius. Saturn is an aversion, and it's not really witnessed by malefics, but it's also falling in miss, although it has a fairly good domicile word there, or exaltation word. So the 40th day of the moon, let me do that. If we look at Tolle's Derby chart, Sunny Bono, and let's take a look at the 40th day of the moon. And here again, we're only interested in what the degree of the moon is. It's a 23 Capricorn. I go back to the chart, and it's here. And Mars is casting a square by degree. If we see a 23 there, Mars is there and casting a superior square by degree. That's not too good. There's also the sextile from Jupiter and one from Venus, but sextiles, according to Valence, are too feeble and weak to really shout down a square, is what he says. So we see that there's danger. So now what we want to look at is fortune and see if we can determine when. Look here. Okay, so we have the deadly place being Scorpio, and this happened in January 5th, 1998. 1996. So he reaches the deadly place in 1996. What is that showing? No, I'm in the wrong. Never mind. This was wrong. Sunny Bono. Okay, Aries. Okay, so right around Aquarius. Let's see, so we go there, get to Aquarius, subperiod. Cancer is the general times. And, okay, so we got Saturn and the Moon destroying each other here. That's what's going on. Because we have the Moon as Lord of the general times, Cancer, and Saturn destroys the Moon. It's not the 8th room fortune for some reason. Let me take a look at what's going on below that. So we go to January 5th, 1998. It's Aries. It's Virgo handing over to Aries. Okay. And again, that's first 8th house relationship. It seems like this happens a lot when researching charts like this, that you will find that not always do they come out just as like we had in Martin Luther King or with John F. Kennedy Jr. and Steve Irwin, where it's so obvious that the 8th place is dangerous. Sometimes it comes out, and this is in a different way, and it's not that easy to see. So, okay. Now let's look at John. Let's see. Look at what. Let's look at Mount. Let's see. John Lennon here. Now he was cut down by assassin too, and it seems like a lot of these people have Mars in the 7th. And it would be the case topically here. What we're looking for here is, let's change this over to John Lennon. And he died, it was December 8, 1980. So it was Aquarius handing over to Scorpio. So we double click, and Scorpio is handing over to Aries to the day. So Aquarius to Scorpio to Aries. So that means that Saturn and Mars were heavily activated, and look here once again, Mars, Saturn has the 8th house relationship. So again, that's a little bit difficult to see if you didn't know beforehand. One of the things that you could do afterwards with a lot of this, if you happen to feel like it's iffy about the time, then you take any of the highlights, the potential highlights that might be here, and direct them. You might be able to nail them down, saying some are more dangerous than others and more likely to hold the light force, and direct them as the Aphida. And what I do a lot of times, I'll go over here into the primary directions unit, and then I'll go over here and I'll change themes over to anaretic rays. And when I double click there, the selections will bring up, the potential highlights will be here, and the anareta and the anaretic rays will be here. And then I click save, and then I can generate them, and then I have a list of all the potential times when there's danger. So, and then each one of these can, like I said before, you can click, you compare with other Time Lords in the process and see which ones are potentially dangerous. Then you can rectify. So if you don't like the way something is showing, for example, if I go to Johnny Carson, his time was like a little bit off. I wasn't sure, but he has, like, if we do take like the highlight would be this, well, both of these kind of decline, so the if you take valence, it might be the midheaven, but I'm going to take the ascendant, and we just do a direction of the ascendant. Before I do this, I've got to probably switch to Johnny Carson if I can find him in the list. All right, so it's recalculated, but I'm going to. Those are the lists of potential anareta. So here we have, this is the ascendant. He died in January 2005, so fortune to the opposition of Mars, moon to the opposition of Mars. Well, no, that's the ascendant there. Have that. So if we want to change that, we could rectify and go over to utilities, bring up the rectification toolbar, and then we can animate this forward, I think, because we're looking for the superior square array of Mars to wherever the ascendant would be directed to. So, and if we change it, like say there, and then we click, okay, it recalculates, and we have, all right, ascendant, looking for the superior square array. Why isn't it showing here? Oh, let me get the direct. I'll shorten it half.
So as you've been working with these techniques, have you found them to be pretty effective then?
Yes, certain ones more so than others. I didn't go through the decennials at all today, but that's also showing quite a bit when one finds one's purpose in life, which one of the things that Robert Schmidt brought up, because the decennials method, for example, will give either the sun or the moon or the first planet after the ascendant is the initial Time Lord starting the sequence, and then the rest of the planets in order. The predomination is very much like that. It's either the sun or moon or the ascendant. So he kind of thought that the logic of predomination and therefore the selection of the life and therefore when that selection is most likely to manifest. When is that going to come into focus? When is one's life purpose going to come into focus? It will be when that planet becomes a time warp. So, so this is those are the types of things I've been working with. So there are a lot of other methods. Unfortunately, I just haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time for some of the other techniques.
So the wizards that you have in here, are those designed so that with people who are not very familiar with the techniques, they can...
Right. In fact, that's why I did them, because that way you can just read through and you kind of get a feel for what Schmidt was thinking about, at least in this section of the program. However, a lot of this stuff, I mean, some of it you just have to know the material too, particularly with all this other stuff that really, I mean, for example, the zodiacal releasing method really isn't, I mean, we don't have any proof that it is a system of Hermes oriented, or the origin comes from that, or from Hermes Trismegistus. Valens says it comes from the amazing Abraham, you know, in his text. So we don't really know, and there are also things about it that suggest later modification, like the addition of 27 for Capricorn, and for some reason these work really well like that. And so even though the ideal period for Saturn would be 30 for Capricorn and Aquarius, it seems that when you scale it for large periods of time that you ought to reduce Capricorn to 27 years. But we also do that in the subdivisions too. So I don't know. And the thing is, I have tried, this is one method that I have tried other timing with. For example, 365 year, it was no go for me. I just couldn't get it to work. So I think there is something real here. I'm not sure. I mean, because it's peculiar. I mean, toying with Jyotish a little bit. It's almost like you have to shift your eye into a different dimension in order to be. It's kind of, so some things I wouldn't recommend mixing these techniques necessarily. I mean, I tried a little bit, but I haven't been very successful yet with it. It seems that this particular method, as far as I know, the way I see it, works best with tropical. Now, the other thing that I had mentioned earlier that he might have used an 8-degree offset, but I went back and calculated some of those charts in valence that actually show degrees, and they're really kind of all over the place. Valence was making the important, she says that it's very important to observe planets to the degree, but frequently he'll have one that's like off by about 8 or 10 degrees. And it's not in the direction that it would be in the other direction. So I think that in general he was probably sticking with straight. It would have been coincidentally tropical at that time, but it might have been a sidereal of the zodiac, we just don't know. But I don't think that he was actually using that system A or system B that Fagan talks about.
So most of how you've been programming this comes out of Schmidt, and then as you've been adding, I take it with the valence, you've been adding additional translation material?
Yeah, I kind of left that stuff behind around 2010. I haven't seen Robert Schmidt since February of 2010, so I have been working more with the material directly as I've been adding things. And the classical medieval stuff is all pretty much just stuff that I've seen either from, well, Ben Dykes asked me to put a technique in there, and then it's not strictly Umar al-Tabari, by the way. He wanted a variation where the days would be basically proportional to the obliquity, well, not, I should say the oblique ascensions, whereas Umar al-Tabari just used straight days. So.
Well, it seems like the real power of this is to be able to program in what we find and then test.
Yep, it's a good, really good research program. So I've been working on this primarily because I asked years ago, asked Astrolabe, Cosmic Patterns, all the other companies put this stuff in. They didn't want to do it, and finally, when I did it, they started to do and get this stuff in themselves. Of course, I didn't know about Ruben Koloff. He did a pretty good job too. But he was doing this stuff roughly the same time that I was, and now has like classes out too. So, but mostly right now, I mean, I'm doing more readings than programming. But I have had my eye on the technology sector. There's been some developments that I want to take advantage of. Cross-platform technology and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So these are things I have my eye on in the future, but I'm doing them as I have time, because right now I'm doing consultations with clients and so on.
Well, we are reaching the end of our time. Is there any other things that you'd specifically like to mention?
Well, I think I've covered all the big issues. I mean, there's the graph, there's current time wars. I even have a tree view for it too, but I don't use that much.
Somebody is asking, how about cost of upgrades?
Well, right now it's $25 to upgrade from any version that you had prior. I've got like 50% off, usually about $50 to upgrade from each version, and it goes from whole version to whole version. It's not every single update. It's like if you bought version 7, then you won't be charged again until there's a version 8. And the other thing that I did recently is if you've spent more than $400 total, then all future updates are free forever. So.
Well, that seems very, very fair.
So.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing this, and this is a wonderful resource.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
And look, people are putting their thanks in on the...
Yep.
So do you bring up how people can find you if someone doesn't already know, your website?
Yes, my website is astrologyxfiles.com.
Yeah, let's bring that up so people can see.
Let's see if we go to Google homepage. Let me just go to that. I use my home page and that is my personal page. So this is the main website here.
Okay.
And you just go there, and if you want to order, you just click on credit card order there, or Delphic Oracle there. The other thing too, I mean, there are not too many people teaching this material right now, so I would like to mention Chris Brennan does do a course on this stuff. And I have this on my website down here.
Okay.
If you can get a hold of Robert Schmidt, his site is projecthindsight.com. So he would be another person, but I haven't heard from him in a long time, so I wonder what's going on. And so anyway, this course in Hellenistic astrology would be right here. And he covers a lot of the same stuff that I covered, probably more in depth than I've been able to do today.
Okay.
So, and I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, I do have a lot. I have like 8 to 10 pages of notes. I got only through about 3 of them. So,
well, that's a promising thing to know that there's so much more there to play with.
Yeah, there really is. I had a whole philosophical section too about the ethics of dealing with this. I think I've covered it enough, but I did have some history too, with the predestination paradox, with the Calvinists and St. Thomas Aquinas and all that, but I'm not going to get into that today. It would have been appropriate for Mercury Jupiter, though.
Well, if you write any of it up, we'd be glad to put it in our newsletter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We'd be very happy.
All right.
And actually, if you don't want to tackle the entire thing, but just take sections at a time, we can just have a regular piece in the newsletter if you'd like, and share some of this. It does seem that there's some need to really look at some of this and do some of this testing, so I'm delighted to know more about this program.
Well, thanks for having me. I guess, does anybody else have a question?
Looks like they're giving some, somebody said they noticed the 15 sign, thinking about it as an flip of an Area 51, the lost file.
Oh, yeah. That was a really, really strange thing that happened to me out there. I don't know how to explain that. You see, years ago, and this is what's weird about it, is it happened in the wrong order. The wrong order is what made me realize that I was being guided in a peculiar way. See, I did this website. I mean, I had one in '95. It was called Chiron Astrological Service, and then I changed it. I was looking, then around 1999, website of the week, Richard Knoll, he put me up, and I had all of a sudden, I had 200 visitors. Usually I was only getting about 5 to 10 or maybe 15 in one day. It was really terrible, but I wasn't really motivating myself too much with it. And then around that time, he put that up there, and then I decided, well, it's time to get serious about it. That was, by the way, during the time, I'll just bring my chart up for a second here. That was when I was 39 years old, and if you add the periods of the Sun and Mercury together, 20 and 19, that's also 39. That's one of the other techniques Valence uses with the ascensional times. Those two became active, and I started writing like crazy. So, and it's not like I had some of this notes. I had notes from all the way back into the 80s, and I just transcribed it into the computer, and it became part of my website. So, and I wrote a little bit about this down below here, but what happened was I came up with these keywords when I was trying to become more serious with it. So it was like astrology, planet, zodiac, horoscope, and so on. They're all prominent, so I wanted to put those in there, but I eventually just truncated it down into the Lost Horoscope X-Files. And I used the astrology domain as being the primary one, because Zodiac was and each one was 7 times greater than the other in terms of amount of traffic on GoTo.com. This was back around '99 when I did the research. Horoscope was the most popular keyword. Astrology came next, and then Zodiac was 7 times less. So the difference between Zodiac and horoscope was 49 times. And so when I put that up there, it was, the X-Files was kind of popular at the end there, and so people were finding me that way. But then I put this website together, and this background here, actually, that's an actual photograph. It's doctored a little bit. Obviously, the road isn't there, but that's where I came up with the name Delphic Oracle for the program. That's where I thought of it. I mean, I kind of had some other names in there. I just didn't like them. And then right around that time, I didn't really think of this at first. I thought the sun glyph could be used for the O in Oracle. And like adult, I just sat there for a month like that. After I left the place, I said, wait a minute, this is like staring me right in the face. I could use the moon for the D. And it just kind of fit in like that. I wrote about this down here a little more particularly. I explain this online. But the encounter, like all these different things that happen, if you look, that 15, I mean, this is the most important. When Schmidt was doing the Antiochus text, and he had to come to grips with the idea that this isn't, written like Balin's wrote it, like a journalist would. That there was actually hidden meaning in the way it was set up. That and the definitions, the placement of the definition, very important. In Greek text, the most important definition is placed in the center. And so the 15th definition is the definition about heliacal rising and setting, that there are 14 before, 14 after, and so on. And the 15 is like the Holy Grail, so to speak. It's like the sun. So, and here I am, I'm driving down, I'm on Route 15, and that's where I spent most of my time out in the desert out there, usually either off the side of the road or like in Mount Charleston's not too far off, but that's about 30, 40 miles to the west, or down in Vidal Junction, which is quite a ways off actually, but I was down Barstow and various other areas just camping out, trying to get enough sunlight so I could keep power for my laptop battery, and I basically have a deep cycle battery hooked up to an AC inverter, and that's how I run things. And I had I also have a different connection that pretty much works everywhere, although I try to locate cell phone towers so that I could do business. And I lived like that for a few years up until last year when I finally came home, which was land of my ancestors, my father's farm. He's got 70 acres midway between Mexico and Pulaski. So anyway, I mean, I just this thing, when I worked it out kind of mathematically, if I'm running down the road here, I was near Area 51. And what's the difference? Or if you add 15 and 51, you get 66. That's the greater years of Mars. Okay, and I put that there. Now, when I did this graphic, there's Mars. It's right there. I didn't put that there. That just came up by accident. I chose it. I was like in the program Sky Map, and I was looking for, like
a good
graphics that I could edit and put in, and it just came up like that. So
very nice.
The other thing, too, is if you look at the definition, I was trying to center this for the longest time. It really actually came out about here, but I put it out there because I wanted that to be in the center, and it wouldn't do it. But if you look at what the definition of sphere bearing is, it's definition 17, and if you look at what a sphere bearer is like, you have two people on the side of the road. They have their spears standing straight up. One's put over this way. The other guy puts a spear over that way. You see? I mean, that was just an accident. And that's definition 17. If you count, I did this years ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just count it out. That's the 17th letter. And I mean, there are other things like that, but it was a very strange thing out there. The psychic who didn't know me very well said he saw like lights flashing by me all the time. I don't know what that's about. It was one of Jack Calabresi's friends. But anyway.
Well, thank you again for the webinar, and for everyone who, as with all our other webinars, you will receive a recording, and I very much hope that you send us some of your notes written up, because we'd love to share them to a large audience.
Well, yeah, I can do that, and I can also probably put them on YouTube.
Yeah, well, and then also give us that link, and we'll share it out. So thank you, and thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, whatever time zone you may be in. Do have one last question. Is it available for the Mac or just PC?
It's available for Mac if you've got VMware. I'd be a little more cautious if you're using Parallels or Wine.
Okay.
There are a lot of people using this on Mac. In fact, I've got down here is listed Mac OS 10.6 or later. Assuming you have VMware and you're willing to run it on the Windows side. I think Windows 7 is probably better than Windows 8 personally.
Okay.
You know, it's just me. I think they're both equally stable, but I prefer Windows 7.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Like I said, have a great rest of your day. And I guess that's all there is.
All right, I'm signing off.
Signing off. And thank you again,
Okay.
Curtis.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.